Hey, welcome everyone. It's Lev from Trotec Laser. I hope you like our new intro. We're gonna start that every week now. So we're actually live across Canada and around the world. Thank you everyone so much for joining us in this fabulous. Well, it's nice in Toronto, but James told me it's pretty cloudy in BC, if you could tell. So we have Mr. James Minchow and Don, our consumables manager. Hi, guys. So we have actually two special guests for you guys today. The first gentleman is from across the pond, Mr. Trevor Stevenson. Hey, Trevor, how are you?
Very well, thank you, guys. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. Trevor, you want to give us maybe a quick intro about yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name's Trevor Stevenson. I work for Trotec Laser UK and I cover the northwest area. So that's including places like Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, places like that. And I've worked for the company for 3 years.
Perfect. Welcome to the jam. And we have our special guest, Mr. Lewis Miles. Very nice to finally meet you. Thank you for being our guest today. And it looks like you're coming from an airport hangar. That's an awesome. Yeah, that's an awesome background. So that's actually your shop right there, right?
Yeah, this is one half of it. So it was 10,000 square foot in total. 52 units.
Oh, sorry, Lewis. We're getting a little, I guess, issue with the microphone. It might be because you're outside. I think it might be easier to go inside. But while you're going inside, if you want to show us the facility quickly, like you did.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. So basically, this is the laser side.
That's the 3000.
Yes, correct. So next door, well, we put the laser in here to try and keep it away. Quite a lot of CNC work. And then next door, we have various other pieces of machinery and large format CNC as well. So that's situated in here to try and keep the dust down. And we haven't really been in here very long, so we moved in. We're due to move to another unit. That one didn't quite work out, so then we came across to here and just starting to settle in, really. It's been a busy couple of months, crazy couple of months with everything else going on as well. So, yeah, see what happens.
That's awesome. We have people saying hi everyone. Leave us a comments in the chat if you have any questions. Please let us know. And Lewis, what part of the UK are you located in?
So we're in the Midlands, a town called Tamworth, pretty central to the UK. Yeah, it's a great location to be honest with us.
Sorry, are you guys having trouble hearing Lewis? Or is it just me?
I
Lewis,
can.
Do you want to go to the other place?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, the background looks really nice though. But
that's okay.
Sorry, Trevor.
So, yeah.
What part of the UK are you from?
I'm in Sheffield.
In Sheffield. Okay. Is that in the center or in the north of the UK?
North of England.
North of England.
Yeah, in the north, fairly near Manchester.
Near Manchester. Awesome. So, Lewis, if you want to kind of tell us about the company, how did you guys get started? What kind of work you guys do? I'll share the screen and let people see the business.
Okay, so we first started out doing more domestic work, general kitchens, cabinetry, bespoke woodwork, things like that. And then we wanted to get a bit more creative. It was just myself and one other employee at that time. And then we started just getting some retail display jobs coming through and really liked how we could be more creative, use a lot more different types of materials. I always wanted a workshop, so I knew that by going down that route, it would probably lead us to having a workshop at some point. So we started doing more of the retail side of things and then getting into the events after that, really. So we did shop fitting at first. And then we're lucky to have some friends that are at agencies, which allow us to have connections with, various different brands, big brands, small brands. And it's just led us to being able to come into a workshop like this and start making some really amazing stuff, to be honest.
Well, and how long have you guys been in business?
So as formed we've been together. Well, it's been a business established for about 4 years, but we've been doing this since about 2011, really, doing all the shop fitting and all the domestic work. But we don't really do any domestic work at the minute. It's mainly retail, to be honest with you.
Mainly retail. Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And how did you guys, acquire like the large format laser? I mean, how did you hear about it?
Well, to be honest, I just knew that we needed a laser for the style of work that we were doing, and I inquired because I'd seen some online, and I spoke to Trevor at first, and he was kind enough to just run me through the details on the lasers, and he straight away got a gist of what I was after, being large format and going hand in hand with the CNC as well. So we had a chat. At the time, I couldn't quite afford it, and then a bit of time passed. We really started to need a laser, and he got back in touch with me and said, let's make it happen, sort of thing. So it's been a very easy process with him, to be honest with you, to get it all sorted and to having it installed. It's been great.
Well, very cool. And Trevor, you were telling me before that, Lewis actually moved a few times to get the machine going in now.
Well, when we first started talking about the possibilities of the machine and what Lewis was trying to get to with the company, it went from about 18 months from an idea of wanting it, never actually having a chance to come and look at one, in fairness, because he was too busy. Very often I'd speak to him and he was in another country, so that was quite difficult. And then when the opportunity kind of came up, he leapt at it. We met him down in our UK showroom in Guildford, which was just a couple of hours away for him. And within about 25 minutes, really, decided he was going to go for it. And then it was just finding his location. So he found a workshop, then he found a better workshop, and then something happened with that workshop, and then he found this new workshop. So since between all that, obviously we've got everything going on with the COVID at the moment, so I've not actually had a chance to see the machine in place.
No. I had time to come over, have you?
Not yet. In the next couple of weeks.
I'll hold you to that, mate.
No problem.
So were you familiar at all with lasers prior to, because you were saying that you knew you needed a laser for the type of work that you were doing. Were you familiar with laser cutters and laser fabrication prior to looking into one for your own business?
Not really, no, to be honest. We've dealt a lot with like metal lasers and things like that before.
Right.
I never really had much experience on lasers. I just knew the type of work we were getting into really required it, and we were outsourcing quite a bit. So I knew that they were using lasers to do what we were asking them to do. So it just made sense, to be honest. I'm someone that just, if you can bring it in-house, you may as well. So, I just knew it would be the next big piece of kit that we would really need to bring in-house and help us grow in that way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Before you started doing this, what were you doing prior, or did you take any schooling in this sort of work?
So I trained as a joiner, and I did my apprenticeship. I think it was about 3 years, something like that. And then I went traveling, and then came back, worked at a couple of other firms, did a few different types of jobs, and then just wanted to set up doing this sort of stuff. So skill-wise, my background is joinery, and everything else has just come because I've needed to learn how to do it. And it's always that thing, you just start searching YouTube and just having a look and you can figure it out one way or another.
Thank goodness for YouTube.
Kind of always the way these days, yeah.
What did we do before YouTube and Google?
I know.
How did we ever cope?
Ridiculous.
Let me ask you too.
And I mean, you mentioned, you were outsourcing a lot. I mean, what percentage were you outsourcing for the laser until you kind of hit that percentage point where like, okay, 30% of our work is laser. Let's just get a laser. Or was there a threshold there?
Not really, to be honest, I only have to outsource the slightest bit, and I'm already wanting to buy it myself. I'm a bit of a geek for machinery, to be perfectly honest. So we were outsourcing a large amount, and it was more if I'm being brutally honest, it was more the fact that someone else was making that money rather than us, and it just made sense to, if you're spending X amount a month on these products with other people, you may as well bring it in house and make that money yourself. So it just made sense really to get our own laser and start learning how to use that. And to be honest, I'm not that skilled on the laser. I do have someone now that is a lot more skilled than I am, which is good. But it's nice to be able to learn another skill and another side of CAD/CAM software as well. And we're making it work. It's good.
In your experience then, Lewis, so where would you say the line is where there's the value of outsourcing, where it's an asset for you, and then where it turns into all you're doing is investing in somebody else's business then?
I'd say the line probably comes if it's a monthly. I would judge this on like repetition. So if it's a monthly thing that you're going to someone else and constantly paying them to do a job, and you have, say, the funds and the means, like workshop space, to do that, like to bring it in house, I think everybody should try at least. I think, obviously, all companies need to keep going, but I think you just have more control, and I think that's how companies grow at the end of the day, isn't it? They expand and take on new challenges for themselves. So I'd say the threshold just came because we was spending so much each month with other people, and lead times are a big one, aren't they, with other people? I mean, it's not their fault. They've got work volume, and just like we do. But the industry we're in, unfortunately, doesn't really care about lead times. So we just got to make sure we can get it done as fast as possible. So yeah.
I know you were saying you're not particularly skilled at using a laser yourself, but I am curious how many of the sort of, in your estimation, the sort of production techniques and the sort of way that you would go about designing installations, did it naturally port over to building things with the laser? I suppose if you were already planning to outsource things before, you had already sort of factored that type of idea into your design when you were coming up with them anyway. It's just now, like you say, you get to bring them in-house and do them yourself as opposed to having to, If
100%. It's made it a lot easier, obviously, running things like the CNC and using CAD/CAM software. Software is not that difficult to get a hold of these days. So like a hang of. So, it's not been a difficult process to learn the basics on the laser. It's just getting into the finer details behind etching and just sort of more intricate work, should I say. And there's a bit of a learning process with different types of materials. We obviously, since we've had the laser, with everything going on in the world with COVID and whatnot, we've been doing a lot of screens and face shields, and we've been, for the face shields in particular, to PET-G, and we had a large order of PET-G for the screens as well. So to try and learn how to use that on the laser was a fun task, and I'll be brutally honest with you, I think I gave up once or twice, and we don't really cut too thick of PET-G because it just doesn't cut that great, does it? But unless you guys can tell me how to cut it, which I'd love. So
it's tricky.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
what thicknesses are you cutting? Like,
so that's 5 mil. What we have 3, 5, and 6 mil.
Wow.
Of PET-G. Okay.
Well,
I mean,
8,000 frequency. That's I always start with that on PET-G and then work my speed and power around 8,000 frequency.
Yeah. Okay. I wish you were here when I was trying about 30 different samples to get it nice and clean.
Well, fly me out.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And then, I mean, speaking of COVID, how did it kind of affect everything that you guys were doing? I mean, you kind of had one game plan, and then March hit, and then the world changed. What did you guys do? How did you adapt? Or I mean, what were you really feeling?
Yeah. not gonna. It's been difficult. It's been difficult for almost everybody, hasn't it? Really. So the retail industry just disappeared. So that completely went. So we just immediately switched to making screens and face shields, like a lot of people, I'm sure. But we kept on doing. We do a lot of contract cutting as well on the CNC. So that continued to help us keep going. And there's a large cost involved in moving into a space like this and setting it all up with brand new solutions in here. So I was optimistic at first that it would start coming back a lot sooner than it has. It hasn't. So we've just basically adapted slightly and just continued to make what we can with the jobs that what's required really at the minute, and just adapt really. It's been difficult, but we'll find our way through, and I'm sure everything else will come back to normal at some point. So,
I was just enjoying when you were talking about doing intricate work with the laser while Lev was playing a video of what looked like a giant flamethrower bursting flame out into the.
Yeah, we get into some random things sometimes.
We actually, go ahead, Don. I know what you're going to ask.
Well, I was just going to say, I was curious to sort of tag on to the question I was asking before. Like, what are the typical, I mean, obviously, as you're sort of saying, COVID obviously has changed the way that a lot of customers are using their lasers. And I'm happy, obviously, that lasers offer that opportunity for people to be able to contribute to those efforts. But in sort of what would consist of maybe your more typical offerings for Formed, what would be the sort of things that you'd be using the laser for? So is it a lot of like large acrylic signage? Is it because I mean, just in your website, you have such a cool. I mean, scrolling through your Instagram here is like I'm just kind of mesmerized by it.
Yeah.
It's a combination of like beautiful installation
Appreciate that.
and also but
I'm
also
absolutely
kind of,
terrible on social media, so I really do appreciate that.
aren't we all? No, it's great. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm just curious, what would be the typical use case for the laser for you? Are there typical things, or is it sort of different with each project?
Everything is different. I mean, like you get your most common things like acrylic boxes, signage, things like that, lettering. But there's just so many things we can use it for. One-off components. In a lot of the event-based stuff that we do, there's always bespoke items that need creating to make the event different than the last one and different for different clients. So it really, I mean, there's just so many applications we could use it for and will use it for, especially when they start back up again. But I couldn't pinpoint one and say that it'll be used for that more on a regular basis. It's just a large variation. I don't think I've ever done 2 events that are the same, so which is good because it keeps it fresh, and we all love doing what we do, and it's exciting, and it's intense sometimes when the deadlines are approaching and you don't have a very long time to get everything ready anyway. But the stuff that we make, we've always tried to make sure that it's the best quality possible, and that's part of the reason why we buy the best possible machinery. Do you know what I mean? They go hand in hand really. We don't want rubbish coming off the machines because we're not going to put it into the stores. So it's going to help a lot with the more bespoke items for these events, and I'm looking forward to getting underway with those. So yeah,
For sure.
That's actually not the question I thought Don was going to ask. I thought Don was going to ask what is the weirdest or strangest thing that you've ever engraved. We ask this of our guests every week. So,
what the weirdest thing I've ever made or engraved?
Yeah, not engraved. Yeah, I guess made with the large format cutters.
Oh man.
I know you hadn't had the laser for too long, so maybe just in your business overall. I mean.
I think it's more the components that we make on those machines go to making some really random things, and you've obviously you've seen us using flamethrowers on blocks of ice with clothing in it, but we've built balls on top of tables for the ball. I don't know. There's just some really random things, to be honest with you. We've done so many projects. It's been really good fun over the past couple of years, especially, and I'm trying to think of one that stands out more than the other, but I can't really think. I think there's just a lot of exciting. I think we're lucky, really, because we work with a lot of great designers as well. So the events, you can get some events that you make some mad things for, but they always look really nice, clean, and sleek as well. So, it always works regardless. It's not like we'll just make anything. Everybody really tries hard to make a really good looking display, to be honest. So I'm trying to brand. There's been so many.
No worries. Well, it's interesting you talking about designers. I mean, how does it usually work with you guys? Do designers? Is it always like the brands? I'm sure they hire their own, advertising, marketing agencies and so forth. Do those designers already come to you with an idea like this is exactly what I want, or do you guys use your own designers and tell them what?
Yeah, so both really, to be honest. We have our own designers, but at the same time, we work really well with some great agencies. There's one in particular that we work with, and a lot of these designs are sent from. Well, it's more of a brief is sent from the client, and then the agency and ourselves would obviously look at that and try and come up with something that we think would suit that brief, and our knowledge gets put in, like our knowledge of the industry gets put into the design as well. So it works both ways. We'll get customers come direct to us. We'll design stores and displays on our own, or agencies will come and we'll work with them, or they might send us something that's completely finished and we just have to fabricate it. So yeah, all avenues really.
Oh, some beautiful stuff. Wow.
I hate to say this because it sounds so cheesy, but Lewis, like, your business is such a great example of what we always try and tell people when they come in to see a laser, that oftentimes, I mean, maybe James, you can sort of help me out with this, but buying a laser can be a way of having a job that is actually about doing something you really love to do. Do you know what I mean? That, like, if you have mad, crazy, cool ideas that, you're thinking about how you could fabricate them or how you could bring them to life or whatever it is, that, like, the laser has such a versatility when it comes to the different materials that it can work with, that it really is one of those tools that can possibly allow you to make just about any kind of business, provided that, it is like within a sort of laserable context. But like, it's so nice to talk to somebody who's really passionate about what they do. And that obviously happens to coincide with the laser, but like, you're exactly the sort of business that I would love to be able to point to and go like, no, see, like, you can do what you love to do for a living. Like, it is very much possible.
Yeah. It's weird because, every year it's just got better. And this year it was, I was so excited for this year. We all were, and it was going really well. And obviously nobody knew what was going to happen. So, but it is a great industry to be in. It's great because it's different all the time. It's always changing as well. So you have to adapt with it, and you always have to kind of be fresh almost, because you've got to come up with something different. So it's nice, and we all do love what we do. And to be honest, what we really needed, we had a great space before, but we outgrew that quite quickly, and it just wasn't what we really needed now. So we've moved into here. This has a lot of potential, and even just coming into a new workshop that's as big as this and it's clean, it makes everybody a lot more excited for the future as well. So it's, everything goes hand in hand, really, what we do and the space that we're in and the machines that we use in it. It makes everything a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, why Trotec? Like, how did, like, you guys have some some options out there, I'm sure. What brought you to that? I'm just curious, because I also have some people who are who are shopping around, and it's nice to have a sort of a personal look on why somebody did what they did.
I would personally say, I think it's the same reason why I bought the CNC from the company I bought it from. I think it's the people behind the company. I'm not saying this just because Trevor's here. I think it's all to do with, it's all to do with how they make you feel, isn't it? If you feel like you're trying to be sold something as soon as you call up and they're just trying to get a sale, then you're probably not going to buy it off them. And we would look for quality, so you do a bit of research on what the brand's like, what the quality's like. And I just had a feeling that it was exactly the right option for us. And I did ever since I first met Trevor. I knew there wouldn't be another laser brand that I'd go with. And I'm going to be really honest here. I could probably only tell you one other brand name. I don't know any others because I just stopped looking. I saw Trotec. I knew that what it was capable of, the quality of it. Meeting Trevor was great. So everything just worked, to be honest with you. And
nice.
That's why I went for the machine.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Trevor, I actually wanted to ask you, I mean, since COVID hit, I mean, how was like your customers? I mean, as far as you know, for the last maybe 4 or 5 months, was there a big change into personal protective equipment, or are they kind of doing what they're doing? Not necessarily even the large format guys.
There's been a lot of changes, and people, I think most people just kind of stopped and was waiting to see what happened. And then you saw a bit of a shift change. So like Lewis mentioned, if you were working for like doing signage, or if you were working for retail and visual marketing, merchandising, that type of thing, a lot of that production has just switched into things like sneeze screens. Obviously, retail needs sneeze screens. So a lot of my customers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lewis, you're still working for the same customers. It's just on sneeze screens rather than the exciting design stuff. So there's been a shortage of plastic for a while. So there's more of it being cut. In terms of smaller customers, personalisation gone through the roof, busier than Christmas. Just because people haven't been able to see family, see friends, go shopping as much.
Really?
So there's been more shopping online, more sentimentality and gift giving, things like that. So even the smaller business have seen a bit of an uptick ordinarily, where it's probably a bit of a trough normally.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the ingenuity, it's the creativity that always seems to drive these people. Just having a laser isn't enough. You've got to have something behind it, and it's the creativity, it's the drive.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess a lot of people would want to know, Lewis, specifically for, the marriage between the CNC and the laser. I mean, do you guys have specific projects that they work together, as opposed to, okay, we're going to do acrylics on more acrylics on the laser and then more of the wood stuff on the CNC? Were there any specific projects that you guys worked on, or do you guys kind of have them as separate units there?
No, I'd say there will be definitely moving forward projects that the two will work hand in hand on the same project, without doubt. For instance, what's on the laser at the minute, also speaking, is a shield that's being etched on some brass, and then we'll cut it out on the CNC afterwards, the outline. It's a hard one, really, because obviously with everything going on, we've not really had the opportunity to use the laser and the CNC to their full potential together, but there'll definitely be projects, and there's things looking at creating a lot of our own products as well for sale through another website. And that, without doubt, there'll be times when we'll use the laser for etching or marking or whatever, and then we'll be using the CNC afterwards to aid in the fabrication of those components. So yeah, definitely they'll work together at some point.
No, it's great. Oh, really, really cool stuff. Also, guys in the chat, if you have questions for Lewis, definitely bring them up. We'd love to hear from you guys. Okay. And what about, the general, I guess, demographics, or do you guys usually sell locally, or do you have customers from outside of the UK?
Yeah, we've got some customers in Europe, more specifically like Paris area. So we do a bit of traveling. It's kind of funny, we're located in the Midlands. We do a bit of work up north, but 95% of it is down south in the London area. And then we want to hop over to Paris every now and again. It's pretty spread. We don't really get that much locally unless it's just cutting, not really display work or shop fitting. Most of that is in the larger cities, really, to be honest.
I was curious. This is something that we've had, and maybe it's more of a curiosity thing, or some of the people who regularly watch our streams and have smaller businesses are always curious what it's like working with a bigger brand like Converse or like Nike, and how that sort of changes your workflow, or how it sort of changes the way that you have to go about, putting together the project. Like, what is it like to work with Nike, for example, and how is it different than working with, perhaps a smaller or sort of less, world-renowned kind of installation?
It's different, but I'd say they both have their challenges and their ups and downs. To be honest, it's nothing to be scared of. They're people at the end of the day. So I guess the main difference would be the lead times. Big brands have so many people behind the scenes working on this that it takes a little bit longer sometimes to get to the final decision. So the lead time shut down, but that's not their fault. It's just, if you've got part of a business in London and then New York or something like that, they've all got to discuss what's going to happen. It takes time, and it's funny because at first you're super excited but very nervous to work with these sorts of brands, because you obviously want to make sure that they're happy with your work and you're keeping everybody up to speed with everything, and everything's getting done on time. And after a while, it's just like another job, really, to be honest. You enjoy the projects because they're always different, and the brand is the brand, and you're working for another person, and it's enjoyable. It has its challenges, but it's always good fun.
Now, we understand it, a subsidiary out of Canada, headquartered in Austria. We understand about perhaps some of the difficulties in communicating internationally. It's tricky.
I have to be quite careful, because you kind of sometimes it does get a bit stressful. And when you asked that question, I was thinking, I'll be honest, but it is very stressful working for the big brands at times, but they're always great, and of course, that's why we do what we do. So.
Well, and I liked your answer too, because it just goes back to, just continue to do what you do best, right? Whether you're doing it for, Nike, or you're doing it for, Mike,
exactly.
they're both, you're still putting in the same quality in and quality out regardless, right? So
yeah, we can make something for a company just up the road and put the same effort into trying to design it as we would with a large installation on Oxford Street in London for Nike. But it really makes no difference. It's just, I guess the projects are larger. That's probably about it, really. And we work with some great independent stores as well, and some great small businesses that, to be honest, I really like working for small businesses, because
there's
a lot of passion involved in it, and they are very appreciative when you're putting the same effort in. They can see you're putting the same effort into them as you would into something like a large installation for someone else.
So what would be a small business? Are you talking specifically like a small retail store? Like, you guys do those too?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. We fit them out, or we might make displays for them. One that you were on a minute ago, Bonds. They're not that small anymore, but when we first met them, they just had one store, and it was actually a container, I think, on a market space.
Oh, this one.
And that was their first store, first brick and mortar store, should I say. And I designed that myself on a bit of SketchUp, and it was just great working with them. And it was enjoyable because they have so much passion for their business that they wanted to learn and know about everything along the way. And it was just, sample testing and seeing what would work best in the space. And then I told you I'm bad at social media, so we then fitted out another large store for them in a place called King's Cross in London, and that's a beautiful store, and they're doing really well out of there, and they do have another little store at the minute. So working with people that they started from just like us, from nothing really, and they've built a business out of it, and then they're not huge or anything like that, and they just enjoy doing what they do, and so do we. So you have a great relationship with people like that, so it makes the work enjoyable.
And we actually have Amy Hill. She's a customer out of the UK who's a Rayjet owner, She joins us all the time on these 1-hour design challenge that we have for Rayjet. So she's an amazing designer. So she's asking, what's the best thing about your job, Lewis?
I'd say the variety. I'm not someone that can just do the same thing repetitively. I enjoy being creative and having new projects to work on. And I say even more specifically, problem solving. You get designers that maybe not in the fabrication, that haven't come from the fabrication world, so they might not all understand how materials work and how you can make them work and get an amazing image sent through to you, and somehow you've got to put that into make it reality and build it, and it's a bit of a problem sometimes, but that's part of the job, and that's what makes it enjoyable, to try and figure out, okay, how are we going to make this work, and what materials can we use, and how can we make this thing look like the image they've sent us. So yeah.
I wonder, Lewis, does your home look like some of these installations have?
No, there's been various items that brands don't want to keep afterwards, and I've considered putting them in my home. One's a very expensive fish tank that we never ended up using, but really it couldn't be used for fish because it was built for some Beats, the Beats pills, the speakers.
Yeah.
And I considered that, but I just can't. I've got too much stuff. We've got another unit over the way that's got displays stored in it, and it looked like a circus if I kept doing stuff like that. So
it's quite a conversation starter, though. You appear to have a giant fish tank filled with speakers. Could you maybe?
Yeah.
The fish like the music.
Yeah, exactly. I was curious though, like. It's interesting because we were just in chatting with a customer last week on the jam sessions. We were talking about how nice it can be to specialize. So I think it's so interesting to get to talk to you this week, where you're talking about the best part of your job is actually the variety. I mean, do you ever feel like, is it ever a challenge, I suppose, to have to come up with something new every single time? Like, do you feel like you have kind of like a house style at all, or is there sort of just like a part of the fun is in the variety and always trying to do something completely novel every single time?
I think that's the most exciting part. I think there is always challenges, and it does. I think for me, I need the variety, and I understand why some people don't want it. They want a more repetitive way of working, as it were. I think you've got to diversify to some degree, because you can find yourself, just like we could have done at this current time, in a bit of trouble if you're not careful. If certain things drop off and they're not making you any money at that time, as a business you need to continue going and continue cash flow and everything. So but I guess that's a different thing to the actual workings of what we do. We're just being creative on each project, but it's still the same style of job, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? We're still doing events, but they're always different. So we're not really diversifying in what we do. In that respect, we're just making every event different. So, but there is. I think this is showing us, and probably a lot of people, that you need to be careful, and if you need to have more strings to your bow, as it were, to make sure that if things like this happen, you can always continue to carry on with the work, and this will come back. So it's not really bothering us. We enjoy doing all of what we're currently doing as well. So yeah,
that's really cool.
Actually, I'm going to put Trevor on the spot here and ask him that same question from Amy. Trevor, what's the best thing about your job?
For me, it's getting out and seeing customers, and if they've got problems in terms of files, software, in terms of materials, meeting them and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it, but also just seeing the creativity. I'll admit I'm not creative at all, so where people get the inspiration from for some of these products, I'm mesmerized by it.
James, what about you?
Yeah, I mean the variety of things that I get to do. I talk to some of my friends who maybe they're building some high tech equipment or something, but they're seeing the same thing day after day, and I get to go out there and see the craziest stuff. I get to be part of people's businesses and help them become successful. And then you get to go see them, 3 months, 6 months, and then a year down the road. And, maybe like Trevor and Lewis, he's looking at Lewis, in his third building, getting bigger and bigger. And there's a small sense of pride in the fact that, you had a small hand in what these guys did. So that's sort of why it's so cool for me.
That's also nice because, there's a lot of companies out there that sell machinery that once they've sold it, you don't hear off them. And I think that's another reason, with Trotec, I think, it's not just, at the end of the day, it's more beneficial for you as the machine supplier that if you're keeping your customer happy, they're going to want to buy more machines, and we already want to buy more of your machines. So and that's all down to the service and the people. So, I'm guessing you say James, it's like you get to see what's being made and what your machines are being used for. Same for us, really. Like, it's nice for us to come in and be able to see what you're using your machines for and how that can be applied to our industry and what we can then offer to our customers. So.
Yeah, I mean, even these podcasts that we're doing now, it's just to build this global community of Trotec users and to show our support to one another. That's really what it's all about. Actually, sorry.
I was just saying it's great. It's nice that you're doing it. To be honest, it's
thank you to people like you and Trevor for keeping this going.
No kidding.
Yeah.
We got a question from LaserTech Botswana. We're going to have them on for next week. Thanks guys for tuning in. For Lewis, I guess, would you be looking at getting into another Trotec laser for engraving on wood, acrylics, glass, etc., to use on future projects, or would you rather stick to just cutting? I think they're talking specifically more for an engraver, like a Speedy 400 or something like that. Did you ever consider that?
100%, yeah. I was only having a conversation about an hour ago, really, to be honest, about that'll be the next thing we buy. I mean, engraving that shield it's working and it's great and it does the job we need it to do. But if you want to do something like that on a more repetitive basis, you're going to need something like the Speedy 400, which is a lot faster. That's a cutting machine. So yeah, without doubt, there'll be more machines from Trotec coming into here at some point.
I guess that's also.
I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Good news, Trevor.
Yeah, I knew that would be
not next week.
You on holiday workshop.
Well, I guess that's also a good question for Trevor and James. I mean, if you have this large format laser, what, like in your mind, what are some of the projects that people can benefit from a Speedy or something that's more focused on engraving as opposed to cutting? Even though they can do both, but I know that large format laser cutters, you can obviously cut thicker acrylics and so on and so forth. But with something like a Speedy 400, especially the new Speedy 400, they're incredibly. I think they're one of the fastest engravers on the market. Where would you use that, James or Trevor?
Do you want to take this one, Trevor?
Well, I've got a customer in Manchester who's got a large format laser and also a Speedy 400. So he's using the large format to take full sheets of plastic and cut them into smaller parts. But in terms of the capacity, the Speedy 400 is far, far faster for putting engraved marks on. So it's a question of using one machine for one process and then moving the smaller components onto the right machine for that process. Because otherwise, you're just bunging the machine up, obviously taking a long time to engrave, but it's not the best optimized machine for the job. So it's just a question of just making sure you've got the right amount of capacity in the right areas. And I guess that's going to change from contract to contract, really.
Yeah, it's sort of like having a hammer and a jackhammer. Both of them do the same thing. They both pound stuff, but you're not going to use the jackhammer to hammer a nail into a piece of furniture, and you're going to spend a heck of a lot of time using your hammer to break apart a block of concrete. So they're two different machines that do exactly the same thing, and they have different uses, and that's why people like Lewis will come to folks like Trevor and I and say, "Hey, can you help me? I think I need this kind of machine," and it's up to us to have the experience with the units to be able to say, "Oh, this is exactly what you need."
It's a very nice analogy, James.
I like the idea of James going to a hardware store and turning this on and needing a hammer and them selling him a jackhammer and coming home with like, "Don't worry, honey, it's well in hand."
James, that analogy is too smart. Did you just think of it now, or
just now?
You're kidding! Now. Wow, that was great.
Well, as a joiner, Lewis has got lots of tools. He's got lots of different types of saw, lots of different types of chisels. So it's just about using the right tool for the right job, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
We got another great question from Amy. I guess this is more for local, for the UK. To Trevor and Lewis, are you more hopeful that the UK government are wanting to bring more work up north?
There seems to be quite a lot in the news, obviously, about the Northern Powerhouse and trying to bring more things up to the north and level things out a little bit. It seems to be happening. And I know of places like Manchester, they seem to be a bit of a hub for the plastics industry. So those guys are kind of busy. And I think we're also seeing a bit of a resurgence where people are looking at trying to buy British, manufacture British, because of everything that's been happening, obviously with China. Obviously, Chinese New Year, then that moved into the COVID situation where lots of people's processes have been held up because they were being made elsewhere. There does seem to be a big push on making more things, being less reliant and keeping things, like the supply chain, more in the UK. That's something that I'm certainly picking up on. I don't know about you, Lewis.
Yeah, I'd say display-wise, it's starting to, we are getting a bit of movement now where we'd work a little bit more up north of us, so because we're quite central, it's starting to be more Manchester, Liverpool area, but it's still very much down south for that respect. But for general manufacturing, I think definitely across the country, more manufacturing is starting to happen here. I think the Midlands and up north has always been quite popular for manufacturing, but you can definitely tell that people are starting to do more work up in the north, and definitely on the point you make, Trevor, about homegrown and manufacturing in the UK, that's happening, and I'm very glad that's happening because there's no reason why anything should really be outsourced, to be honest with you. And just like you guys in Canada, you could make everything you really needed to right there at home.
I mean, especially PPE and times of crisis 100%. Like this. I mean, we've had issues with the N95 masks. I mean, it's not really for laser cutting, but we're working with a local manufacturer that would actually bring raw materials from Europe and treat them to make what we call armor breath, so filters and specific. Yeah. It's not N95 quality. It doesn't prevent 95% of the particles, but it prevents 90% of particles versus like a cotton mask that would be 50 to 70%. So there's definitely a lot of that happening. James, are you seeing that as well? I mean, more like even for BC out west, for local government pushing for more local manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean I've been on the road for longer hours in my demo van out of Vancouver. I've done more demos outside of Vancouver, I guess you'd say, up in the north and up in the interior of British Columbia. than I have ever. Really, I mean, it's it seems like every second day I'm getting on the road and seeing 3 or 4 customers that are 5 hours away from me. My territory is huge, and it's pretty spread out. So, but I find that there's more manufacturing starting in the smaller towns and the smaller cities of British Columbia, and the Vancouver is just sort of holding its own, and I mean it's doing well, of course, but yeah, I see more of that.
And I mean, speaking of governments, Lewis, you don't have to answer any of this if you don't feel comfortable. But I mean, what percentage, I guess, in terms of PPE production, is it commercial versus government for you guys, or is it all commercial at this point?
It's all commercial, yeah. I mean, are you saying for like what we're manufacturing and getting out there? Where is it going?
Well, I mean, is the government coming to you guys for PPE production?
We tried for our health service, but just like a lot of people in our industry that I know have tried, found it quite difficult. This is at the end of the day, they've all got their own avenues of acquiring any of this equipment, but we did try, and we just kept on getting dead ends. So we then turned to more commercial based supplying and general public as well with some of the face shields. But just I wanted to just go back onto something you were talking about like manufacturing in your own country as well. So I think some of that also comes from people outsourcing, because if you're getting beaten on price by having stuff manufactured abroad, there's no reason why that should happen, because a lot of these machines can run at a lot faster rates and even maybe at higher precision than some of the machinery that's being run abroad. So I think a lot of it comes down to people's knowledge about the machines and how they're using the machines and how they could really push their machines to produce more products, better quality products in their own country. And I think in this country, I think this is going to definitely start to happen. And, these machines are absolutely fantastically made. So there's no reason why you can't run them every day, 10 hours a day, flat out, and bring that income to you rather than sending it abroad, I guess. So, yeah.
I will say too, though, on that topic, I think certainly manufacturing and local manufacturing is 100% something we're supporting. But I do, as one small silver lining to the present situation, appreciate how open it's also made people to collaboration, like things like this, where if you were in the midst of doing sort of your regular work, Lewis, I don't know if you would have even had the opportunity to be able to sort of sit down with us today and do this stream. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity that COVID has given us, at least to be able to reach out and sort of say, how are we all coping with it differently? And maybe if I can get a tip from you that I can pass along to somebody here and continue that chain of local manufacturers, then like awesome, fantastic. At least there's some small benefit we can take out of an overall
without a doubt
situation.
And with the agencies we work with as well, we've seen because they haven't been able to have stuff manufactured by people like us because nothing is going into stores. I've seen a lot of Instagram and on social in particular, just collaborations everywhere between different people at different brands, and just trying to make exciting things continue happening and trying to keep everything looking fresh and
exactly
enjoyable to look at. And working with other brands is a great thing. I think it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm sure you'll see it as well. Like a lot of people don't like to talk about who they work for because they're scared that they might take their customers, or you know what I mean? Like they're very reserved about the whole their client base and everything like that. And realistically, there's plenty of work out there for everybody, and it's made a lot easier if you work alongside others that are just as excited to work on these projects as you. You can get a lot more done, and it's just enjoyable.
It's hard to create a buzz for your business without working with others. If you say sequestered in your basement and not reach out to other people for help and for collaboration, then your buzz is flattened, and it's hard to market at that point.
That actually leads me to a question I wanted to ask Lewis, which was about how you go about advertising your business. And I think it's so interesting that you work with huge brands, but I mean, realistically, if you sort of dumb it down in a lot of ways, you basically almost work by word of mouth at this point, I assume, because you're working with big agents. So although you're working with Nike, like that's big enough that at this point you basically are able to sort of say, well, you know, this agency worked with Formed in the past, and now so that when they speak to another agency who's looking for somebody who has your talents, then, you know, they might just refer them on to you, kind of thing.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's practically all word of mouth. I think for us, we're so bad at social media. We've got to get better at it, and it just comes down to time. I just need more time, and we're starting to get that now because we've employed more people.
I disagree. I think you guys are actually, you know, I mean, Instagram, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, the stories, the stuff. So
I went to school for marketing and advertising, and I have a lot of friends now who work as like social media managers. And they're the only ones who understand, like, to anyone who isn't working in a marketing department, that sounds like the most non-job that ever existed. But it really is important, right? It's a lot of work to try and keep up with interacting with customers.
It's a career and a job role in itself. And
100%.
to try and do that, run a business, do your invoices, your quotes, all that sort of stuff, it's a lot to take on, and we already do long days as it is on projects. And I think so that side of things has suffered for us, but at the same time, the business hasn't suffered because people can see that we're 100% dedicated to what we're manufacturing and what we're trying to design, and we always deliver. So no matter what, we're there delivering the installation, getting it done, and it looks great afterwards. Whether or not I take photos of it whilst I'm doing it is another thing, but it's all word of mouth. We kind of find out, we found ourselves, and I'm sure we'll stay in it, but it's a little bit of a niche. So we work a lot with like footwear brands and more streetwear brands. And I think, you know, there's so many companies out there that do what we do, but you maybe have your own style to some degree, and maybe we don't even realize what our style is, but they see it, and maybe that's just the quality of what we deliver, or how we work with people, or how creative we like to be with brands. And perhaps that's what brings people back to us, or gets us introduced to new brands. So I'm not really sure, but it's definitely word of mouth over social and website, for instance.
Yeah, and we're actually in the coming month or so, we're trying to organize a webinar within Canada for large format cutters, like people that have CNCs, water jet cutters, large format laser cutters, and we're trying to get like a panel discussion like this one with just people that have like large format CNCs and so forth, maybe 4 or 5 people. So we always ask, well, what do they want to get out of this kind of panel? I mean, and we want to attract obviously people like you to see it and see and give them some value. So my question to you would be, like, if you see a panel with 4 or 5 other, companies similar to yours, what would you want to get out of it in terms of information? I mean, when we talked to them, they spoke specifically, they want to get how do others manage challenges, when working on projects. It's really more advice for me when we want to do this kind of webinar in the future. What would you want to get out of it if you were watching it as a viewer, and you see, like I said, 4 or 5 different panelists, and they're all discussing their issues about that?
I'd say, I think this was also something I was thinking about earlier, to be honest. I think as businesses grow and get busier, and especially with large format machines, because there's such a calling for those, because of the larger quantities of things you can produce off that. I think for me, it would be interesting to listen to other companies about how they deal with workflow if they're flat out running a machine already and the work continues coming in. And I understand, you could get another machine or whatnot, but in times like this, it's not the wisest thing to do. Maybe go out and keep buying machinery, and so I think for me it'd be interesting to hear about how, I don't know, I guess how they would
deal with extra workflow, basically.
Yeah, and deal with the. I think at the minute it's up and down all the time. So how they would deal with the workflow and the pressures that can bring, because I don't think we've ever had a customer that is happy to wait more than a couple of days. So it'd just be interesting to hear, really.
No, that's great. Thank you. I'll definitely bring that up as a question for the panel. I'll keep you guys in the loop for what we do. I guess we're at the top of the hour, so we can kind of finish this off. I just have one last question that we kind of ask our guests at the end. I mean, for Lewis, what advice would you give for up and coming businesses? I mean, you were an up and coming business, and you're now in kind of that next level. What advice would you give for new businesses in the laser market or the large cutting market, similar to yours?
I'd say first thing is that just make sure you enjoy doing what you do. That's probably number one. And I think I'm probably going to be the only person that will say this, but take risks, calculated risks, of course. Because if it's something you really enjoy doing and you take the risks and you give it your all, it can pay off nicely, and it makes it all that sweeter when it does come together and really start working for you. So that's probably my advice.
You speak from experience, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so our first machine was a large format CNC, and we come up against companies that don't even have CNCs. And have been going for 10 times longer than we have. And I think I just knew straight away that if I was going to compete in this industry, we would need a large format CNC and to spend the money. And it's daunting because it's the same price as a house. And it's one of those things. You just, if you want to do it and you're giving it your all, you just go ahead and do it and get it done, don't you? And enjoy it. You may as well enjoy it. There's no point in worrying about it. So, yeah.
No, that's wonderful advice. That's wonderful advice to leave. I guess we'll end it there. We didn't have any time for priority questions, but hopefully we'll have some next week. If you guys are watching out there, you have a Trotec laser anywhere around the world, and you want to join our panel, reach out to us, YouTube at troteclaser.ca, or you'll find a way to reach us. Just message us on Instagram. We're not that scary.
And yell Trotec.
Trotec!
Somebody needs me.
Well, I'd really like to thank Trevor and Lewis for being our special guests. That was really great insight, especially in the large format world. So come back anytime, guys. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.